Leila arrived in the small coastal village early in the morning, her camera bag slung over her shoulder and her heart filled with a sense of anticipation. The salty sea breeze whispered through her hair as she walked along the narrow cobblestone streets, the pastel-colored cottages lining each side. It was the perfect escape, a place to recharge her creative batteries and find new inspiration for her photography. She had spent the last few months in a whirlwind of city life. Endless photo shoots, crowded streets, and the constant hum of urban noise. But now, standing on the edge of the village, she felt a quiet calm settle over her. She had heard stories about this village, about how it had once been a popular destination for artists seeking solitude. Now, it seemed to be a secret kept by those who appreciated its peaceful beauty. As Leila wandered towards the beach, the sun slowly rising over the horizon, she spotted him. A man, sitting alone on a weathered bench by the shore, strumming a guitar. His face was partially obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, but something about his presence intrigued her. There was a quiet sadness in the way he played, as if the music was a reflection of something deeper within him. She lingered near the edge of the boardwalk, watching him for a few moments. She had always been drawn to music, the way it could evoke emotions without words. But there was something else about him, something she couldn't quite place. He stopped playing and looked up, catching her gaze for the briefest moment. Their eyes met, and for a split second, it felt as though the world had stopped turning. Then, he turned away, almost as if nothing had happened. Over the next few days, Leila couldn't shake the memory of the man she had seen by the shore. He hadn't spoken a word, yet something about him lingered in her mind. His presence was like a quiet echo in the back of her thoughts, something she couldn't fully understand but felt deeply. She spent her days exploring the village, camera in hand, capturing the beauty of the coastline and the charming little shops that lined the streets. It was a photographer's paradise, and yet, her focus was often distracted by the image of the stranger on the beach. She wondered who he was, what brought him to this quiet village, and why he seemed so distant, as if carrying the weight of a past he couldn't escape. One afternoon, while visiting a local cafe, Leila struck up a conversation with the shopkeeper, a woman named Mary who had lived in the village her entire life. As they spoke, Leila learned that the village had a rich history, full of artists and writers who had once called it home. But there was one story, a story Mary hesitated to mention, that seemed to stand out from the rest. It's said that love, true love, comes here when it's least expected, Mary said, her voice lowering. But there's always a price to pay. Some love stories never get their happy endings. Leila was intrigued. What do you mean? Mary glanced around, as if ensuring no one was listening. There were two families once, your family and his. The story goes that they were connected in a way. But things were never meant to be. Before Leila could ask more, Mary quickly changed the subject, as if realizing she had said too much. Leila's curiosity grew, but she didn't push for more information. Instead, she walked back to her rented cottage, her thoughts swirling with unanswered questions. That evening, as she walked down the beach, she saw him again. This time, he was standing at the water's edge, his guitar forgotten at his feet. The same sadness was in his eyes, and something about his posture suggested that he, too, was lost in thought. Without thinking, Leila approached him, her steps soft on the sand. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice tentative. The man turned slowly, his eyes locking with hers. For a moment, he seemed as though he wanted to say something, but then, he simply nodded. "Just thinking," he muttered, his voice low. "About things that can't be changed." Leila stood there for a moment, unsure of what to say next. There was so much she wanted to ask him, but the silence between them seemed to speak louder than words ever could. The following day, Leila couldn't focus. The conversation with the man on the beach, the mysterious guitar player, kept replaying in her mind. There was something haunting about the way he had spoken, something more than just his sadness. It was as if he had hidden away a part of himself, something he didn't want to share. Determined to learn more, Leila returned to the cafe that afternoon, hoping Mary would offer more insight. She sat down with a cup of tea, waiting for the right moment to ask her questions. Mary arrived at her table, wiping her hands on her apron, a knowing look in her eyes. "I see you've been thinking about that boy by the beach," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "His name's Daniel. He's part of this village's past. And so are you, whether you know it or not." Leila was taken aback. "What do you mean?" Mary lowered her voice, glancing over her shoulder. "Your grandmother, Leila. She was involved with his family many years ago. It was a love story, one that the village hasn't forgotten. But something happened, a betrayal, a secret, that kept them apart." Leila's heart raced as she listened. Her grandmother, a woman she had always admired for her strength, had once been part of this mysterious past? What happened? Why didn't she ever mention it? Mary's expression softened with regret. "Some things are better left unsaid. But Daniel, he knows the truth. He's carrying it, just like you are, whether you realize it or not." Leila felt a chill run down her spine. Her mind was spinning, trying to piece together the fragments of a story that had long been hidden. She had come here to escape the hustle of city life, to find new inspiration, but now it seemed as though the past was reaching out to her in ways she couldn't yet understand. That evening, she stood on the beach once more, the wind whipping through her hair. As if drawn by an invisible force, she looked to the water's edge. There, standing as he had before, was Daniel. His gaze was far off, lost in a sea of memories that she could only begin to comprehend. Without thinking, she approached him again. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice trembling with the weight of the discovery. "I need to know the truth. Please." Daniel turned to face her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filling the silence between them. "I knew this day would come," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the wind. "But I didn't want it to. Not like this." Leila's heart ached, her emotions swirling in confusion. She had spent days trying to make sense of everything, and now, standing before Daniel, she felt more lost than ever. "You knew? What do you mean? What's the secret? Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel sighed, the weight of years of silence in his eyes. "It wasn't my story to tell. Your grandmother. She and my father, they were in love once. But things happened. Things neither of them could control. It's complicated, and it's painful. I didn't want to bring that pain to you." Leila took a step back, the shock of his words hitting her like a wave. Her grandmother, the woman she had always looked up to, had been involved in a forbidden love affair? And Daniel, he was part of that story, part of the pain that had been hidden for so long. "You should have told me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I deserve to know the truth." "We both do." Daniel's face tightened, and he looked away, as though the weight of his own memories was too much to bear. "I know," he said softly. "But some truths, they're too heavy to carry. I thought it would be better if you never found out." Leila felt a pang of anger surge through her, mixed with a deep sadness. "I don't know who you are anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know what to believe." Without another word, she turned and walked away, the distance between them growing with every step. The wind seemed to carry her thoughts away, but she couldn't outrun the storm inside her heart. For the first time since arriving in the village, Leila felt completely alone. The next few days passed in a haze. Leila found herself wandering the village, her camera forgotten at her side. The vibrant beauty of the landscape no longer inspired her. Instead, she was consumed by the turmoil of the past and the storm in her heart. Daniel's words echoed in her mind, and the weight of the secret seemed heavier with each passing moment. But as the days went on, Leila began to realize something. The anger, the hurt, it wasn't just about the past. It was about fear. Fear of being vulnerable, of opening herself up to someone who might leave her broken. But that wasn't the future she wanted. Not anymore. It was late one evening when she saw him again, standing by the water's edge, just as he had before. But this time, there was no guitar, no sad stare into the distance. His eyes met hers, and this time, there was a softness there, a longing for something more. "Leila," Daniel said, his voice gentle. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought keeping the truth from you was the only way to protect you." Leila took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her own walls crumbling. "I was angry, Daniel. And scared. But I can't keep running from the past. I don't want to live in fear of what might happen." A smile flickered on his lips, a mixture of relief and tenderness. "Then let's face it together," he said. "Let's build something new, something that's ours." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the sea. As Leila stood there, her heart finally felt at peace. The past had shaped them, but it no longer held power over their future. Together, they were ready to embrace whatever came next.